there's some interesting research that shows that for your mitochondria, the cold exposure can be one of the best things you can do, and especially when it's dark. What cold exposure does is it activates the little nanomotors in your mitochondria, so it literally lets your body emit more light. It's just one more reason to have really enjoyable showers that are super cold.
If you're really stressed out, your adrenals are going to be working hard. Sometimes it can be really good to put your body through some intensity, but then the recovery is just as much or more impactful. And so you got to have that nice equal balance. Otherwise, you'll run into adrenal fatigue.
But then the challenge for today is to start thinking, how can you, on a regular basis, keep this HPA axis nice and healthy? Because that is your number one healing shortcut.
All right, good day and welcome everybody to the Health Accelerator Challenges. This is your host of the afternoon, Cade Archibald, and I am excited to be here. I got along with me, we got the man himself, Regan Archibald. Regan, how's it going today?
Good. The man, was there...
The man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Regan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Archibald.
Great. And good to have you back. I've been flying solo on this. And so happy to have you on, Cade.
Yeah, excited to be here. We're gonna jump in and have some really, really good times. Olive wants to say hi to everybody. Say hey, everybody.
Hey, Olive.
Sorry.
Hey.
She's okay.
Hey, Charlotte says good evening. Good to have you on, Charlotte. Good to see many of the familiar names. This is great. We have some new people on today as well, and more of you are coming in. So today we're going to be talking about some interesting things. And I had the challenge last week, Kate. I said, get rid of plastics. And I said, this was the challenge that we got the most harsh feedback on before, because plastics in everything. But how many of you were able to just get rid of a little bit of plastic this week? I said, just look at one thing. I didn't say go all in, but I think it'd be great for everybody, because that's an endocrine disruptor. That's what's going to keep your hormone levels where you want them. But how many of you got rid of some plastic over the week?
Yeah, and it is so challenging to get rid of that.
Nice, George.
As much glass as possible. Looks like we got Georgia's raising her hand. Nice.
Yeah. And Georgia was in today, and she has a whole garden that she's put in her house. Georgia's a new woman. So Georgia, thanks for the inspiration. You made my day. I love it when we can see someone's labs, and Georgia's labs look so good. And then we see them physically making the big transformation. So it was awesome. Charlotta, you started drinking water from a glass bottle versus plastic. Try to store most leftovers in glass. Well done. Good. And I think that's what's crazy is even in salt mines, they're now finding there's just nanoparticles of plastic almost everywhere. And that's why we love our central Utah salt mine out of Redmond's Farm. It's really amazing. So in your hormone optimization protocol, a lot of people, they spend all this time, energy, money on optimizing their hormones, but they don't realize that there's all these endocrine disruptors that they're exposed to every single day. It's, you could get new furniture, for example. The fire retardant on the furniture is an endocrine disruptor, really dangerous. The makeup that we wear or don't wear, the the clothes that we wear, there's, the perfumes, the lotions, the shampoos. I mean, it's great to start looking at these chemicals because they're everywhere. And today we're going to shift gears just a little bit. And what we're going to jump into is this thing called the HPA axis. And the HPA axis is pretty phenomenal because it regulates so many different areas of the body. And it's one of the healing shortcuts that we've discovered that can really get people turned around in a short amount of time with the biggest amount of impact. And then we're going to jump into some new peptides that are available, the SS31. So let's jump in, and I'm going to share my screen here. So can everybody see this okay? The healing shortcuts?
Yeah.
All right. So Cade, in our reset, one of the things Cade's been doing is taking the team through all of the essentials in the Accelerate Wellness program, just so everybody is reminded. I mean, we've been doing the 6 essentials for a couple years now. But the HPA axis is kind of foundational in the reset. And Cade, what has been some of the feedback that the team's been giving you on the our 60-day reset challenge that we take our clients through?
I think some of the feedback has been, it can be super transformational. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming when you kind of stack all of those 6 essentials on top of each other right up front. But what's awesome and amazing is if you just start with one and start adding them in gradually over time. And I think a lot of our clients have already started doing maybe 1 or 2 of those things. And so if we can just add in once a week, it's like game changing. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and especially if you just think like, go to bed at 9:30, wake up at 5:30. So not all of you can do that. Some of you have professions that don't allow it. Or get half your body weight in ounces. All these things are really critical. Getting cold exposure, that cold shower is so critical, or jumping in, just get in a cold bath. Do a cold plunge. It's huge. That actually, there's some interesting research that shows that for your mitochondria, the cold exposure can be one of the best things you can do. And especially when it's dark, I know we're coming into summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, but even in the winter, what cold exposure does is it activates the little nanomotors in your mitochondria. So it literally lets your body emit more light. And so just one more reason to have really enjoyable showers that are super cold. So most of you are like, I never use enjoyable and cold in the same sentence.
Especially if you're doing that in the winter months when it's dark more often. It's definitely a little more of a challenge, but that's the one. I think that's where, and it makes a lot of sense. I haven't heard that. I've heard it helps with mitochondria, but not exactly how. So just that little piece right there helps explain why the energy levels. I feel like the next day, if I do a cold shower or cold plunge, in the evening, that next day just feels so refreshed and like ready to go. And I know the other thing it helps with is lowering that internal body temperature. So when you sleep, you want your body cooled off a little bit. You don't want it too hot. And so definitely helps me sleep better. And then I'm also just feeling amped up and ready to rock the next day.
Yeah. And what a lot of doctors miss, what a lot of people miss is the melanin in the body. So I'm a big fan of melanotan, which is a peptide that can make your skin kind of tan. But melanotan has that same property of turning up the mitochondria. And all of these things, when you're getting cold exposure, when you're getting out in the sun, especially as the sun's rising or as the sun's setting, All those things help balance this thing called your HPA axis, and it's part of your overall reset. Charlotta said, I'm in Minnesota, never said it, LOL. Yeah, the cold in Minnesota is a whole nother level. Whew, you guys are tough up there. But all these little things make a huge difference in your health. And there's so much to go along with that. But let's just talk about this pathway really quick, and we'll go through some of the basic physiology. I won't get too crazy on it, but then the challenge for today is to start thinking, how can you, on a regular basis, keep this HPA axis nice and healthy? Because that is your number one healing shortcut. What we realized with peptides is, we're using them for years, and we kept saying, how can we get the same predictable results with everybody who gets on them? And because it seemed like some people responded really well and other people were just kind of marginal. And I said, man, I don't want to have any marginal outcomes in our programs. I want our clients to be incredibly excited and just very enthusiastic about the program and about the peptides and what they can do. And what we realized as I started diving into the research more and starting to understand, going back to the roots of where most of the peptides were discovered, which was in Russia and Eastern Europe, the place that they started was with epitalin. And epitalin is that HPA axis reset. And now that we've got even the bigger doses where you do essentially 1 cc of epitalin every 3 days, it's a great way of just resetting the entire HPA axis. Because the importance of this and why it really matters is, if you want to make big progress in your life, then you want to make sure that all of these systems are interplaying. So the H stands for your hypothalamus. And what the hypothalamus does is it regulates all of the hormones in your entire body. It's like the CEO, and it sees where there's needs because it receives a feedback loop. So it's constantly in communication with your entire bodily systems. The hypothalamus and the pituitary essentially exist right in the center of your brain, and they're the governing body for the communication cycles. And so you can imagine if your hypothalamus is not working, then the pituitary, which is the one that executes on the plan, that's like that's the operations, and that's what puts all the systems in gear. But the pituitary gland, if it's not receiving a message from the hypothalamus, the body starts to shut down. And if you have ever seen somebody who has a pituitary tumor, either they can get too much secretion of one hormone, like one of my clients right now that we're working with, she unfortunately had a pituitary tumor. And that pituitary tumor caused her to have this massive output of growth hormone. And she was losing all this weight. And then it wasn't until she started getting headaches. After about 3 months, I said, things aren't shifting. And then she had a massive headache. And then that's when the light clicked. And I said, oh, man, you need to get an MRI in your brain. And so that's when we discovered she had a pituitary tumor. And luckily, they've been able to remove it. And so now we're getting her hormones back in gear. But when her body had the big letdown of growth hormone because it was being pushed so hard, then all of a sudden everything went in reverse, and she had to get on, essentially steroids to maintain, she got on some prednisone so that she could maintain that cortisol release, because it wasn't there after that tumor is removed. But now it's about 3 months past the surgery and radiation. She's doing really darn good. But this hypothalamus and pituitary are really important because they connect with another gland called the adrenals. And Cade, what do you know about the adrenals? What's kind of a good summary you could give people?
Yeah, so this is your stress gland. So they're little teeny glands that sit on top of your kidneys that help secrete epinephrine, norepinephrine. They're kind of your fight or flight system. And so you got if you're really stressed out, you're gonna really put your adrenals are gonna be working hard. And so that's where stress is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Sometimes it can be really good to put your body through some intensity, but then the recovery is just as much or more impactful. And so you got to have that nice equal balance. Otherwise, you'll run into adrenal fatigue, where that's where your adrenals just get burned out and they've been too stressed out, and then they're not functioning, not producing cortisol that they need to. And yeah, was I right? They, do they secrete epinephrine, norepinephrine, or is that?
That's it. No, that's it. So, and they have inner part and an outer part, and so yes, you know that the inner part is what releases those, and that's if you ever get dizzy or if you stand up too fast, like if you're in a yoga class and you come up from down dog and the room starts spinning, it's a good chance you've got some adrenal exhaustion. But the adrenal glands, Cade said, they're these little glands. They're like the size of a peanut, and they sit on top of your kidneys. So they really are part of the whole kidney complex. But interestingly enough, they control your heart rate, your blood pressure, and they're directly connected to your fight or flight response, like Cade was mentioning. If the adrenal glands have been pushed too long, then that's where this whole HPA axis, the communication, starts to unravel. And so, I like to look at biology as it's just about managing relationships. And so one of the reasons why your challenge last week was, let's get rid of plastics, let's get rid of as many interferences as we can, because what those endocrine disruptors, plastics, chemicals, in the environment, pollutants, what those heavy metals, what those things do is they keep your cells from communicating in an optimal way. And then your health starts to suffer because of it. And our biology is so adaptive that a lot of times you don't even realize it. Like I have people who, turn their nose up at some of the, the weirdness of, the way I like to eat and certain behaviors that I have. And then because they don't really understand, it's like, one of my big goals right now is to spend 2 hours a day out in the sunlight, in natural sunlight. And, that takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of work to leave the office and to make sure I'm up early in the morning. But it's one of those things that helps reset the adrenals and resets this HPA axis. And in the long run, it's a way that I can put some energy back into the tank and make biological deposits. Most of us are making withdrawals all day long, and we're like, well, who cares? It's a Coke or whatever. It's a soda. There goes another withdrawal. Or who cares that I haven't been outside? I'm fine. There's another withdrawal. I'll exercise tomorrow. There's another withdrawal. I don't really feel like cooking. How many times do we hear, like, I don't have time to cook? And it's like, well, okay, well, when are you going to have time to cook? Well, probably never, because your life's going to always be busy, because you guys are ambitious, creative, amazing humans. But at some stage, you're going to have to make it a priority and make it, part of your routine is to learn how to do some meal prep. But all those things is, instead of taking withdrawals from your biology, you want to make sure you're doing deposits. And even when you're trying to get your body in a healing mode and you're putting as many deposits as you can, you're taking all the supplements, you're on all these adaptogenic herbs. If your HPA axis is not working properly, things start to get derailed, and you'll notice that it's really hard to have those deposits move the needle when it comes to your health. So hence this beautiful, what we call the HPA axis shortcut, where we can start getting your body communicating on all different fronts. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So where it starts is it starts in the brain, and there's 4 types of stress. So Cade, what would you say as far as the 4 stressors? There's physical, there's emotional stress, there's chemical, and then there's stress from infections. But what would you say as far as your own personal life goes? Which of these have impacted you the most, in your adult life?
I would definitely say emotional stress, just stress from kids, work, whatever it may be, relationships.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say I've kind of leveled off on the physical traumas. Many of those.
For a minute. Yeah.
Still get a decent amount of injuries, but yeah, trying to keep those to a minimal. But yeah, I would say definitely the emotional stressors is probably the number one thing that I can think of as we get older and older. And I think those are the ones that myself included to kind of just like put it to the side. Just like what you're saying with those withdrawals, the biological withdrawals and deposits. I like that concept where it's like, I'm going to get to bed early, wake up early. That's like, I'm putting in a nice little deposit. So maybe later on I can, take just a small amount out, whether that's, eating a Cheeto or whatever. Not that I like Cheetos, but
Yeah.
but
I'll
yeah.
eat 'em. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting way of looking, and I think we should use that more. I just thought of it tonight. So
That was brilliant. Great analogy.
thanks. You guys heard it first, but actually it's an interesting way of looking at things because the withdrawals are like, hey, I want to go push myself really hard mountain biking, or man, like I'm stranded. I've got to walk 10 miles to get home because my car, got a flat tire or whatever it might be. But think of when you need the resiliency. And that's the beautiful thing is, it's the same thing when you look at your financial health is you want to make sure that you've got the deposits going in more than you're withdrawing, so that if there's an emergency, then you've got the funds to handle what you need to not be overwhelmed with stress financially. It's just like same principle biologically is you never know when the next stressor is going to hit. And so this is where the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis, is the fundamental piece where every single person who starts the program with us, we get you focused on resetting this axis so that we're actually putting this beautiful amount of withdrawals in your biology. So let's talk about this a little more. So HPA axis, it starts in the brain, and your hypothalamus secretes what's called a cortico-releasing hormone. And that's when stress hits, and that's what causes your adrenal glands to release cortisol. And this cortico-releasing hormone, or CRH, directly inhibits TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone, and TRH, which is your thyroid releasing hormone. And what that does is it stops the conversion of T4 to T3. So if you think about if you have any issues with your thyroid, one of the areas that we always go up to first is we work on the HPA axis. And yes, you can throw thyroid hormones at it, and that's fine. But the real question you want to ask is, why is my thyroid underperforming? And this is where we found that very rare, maybe 5 to 10% of the time, where it's a true hypothyroid condition. The other 95% of the time, it's from other mechanisms going on in your body where the communication breakdown is happening in the brain to the adrenals, or it's from cortisol, or it could be in the gut or the liver, not breaking these molecules down. So yeah, the real question is, why is it there in the first place? Oh, I found out I have high blood pressure. Okay. Well, there's medications you can take to work on your high blood pressure. It doesn't fix it, but it at least manages it. But maybe the better question is, why is it there in the first place? And that's what we're talking about today. And even this whole axis being dysregulated can also cause blood pressure to be dysregulated as well. So interesting. So thyroid issues. So thyroid and stress. If any of you, how many of you have ever noticed that, for those of you who have thyroid issues, you've noticed when your stress is higher, your thyroid doesn't function as well. Or even when your stress is higher, you just don't feel as good metabolically. Like you just feel like, man, you don't want to exercise. It's harder to get outside. I don't know. How's that for you, Cade? When you have high levels of stress, Do you feel like exercise? Are you someone who like, I mean, do you feel like I got to go exercise to release it, or what's it like for you?
Um, yeah, usually I feel like I need to go do something, have like a release. But if I'm like really worn down, tired, so let's say I don't get sleep and then I get stressed, like I deal with more stress throughout the day, then it's like I want to snack and I want to nap, or like I want to like veg out. And I think that's where um I, that's probably a little more a lot more toxic than I feel like if I get, decent amount of emotional stress throughout the day and then I go work out or exercise, I like can blow off steam and I just feel so much better. But it's
Yeah,
like the sleep component is really where you can like jack yourself up pretty bad.
yeah, big time. And yeah, because that's the thing. Stress disrupts your sleep, and then you wake up the next day, and that's where it's really hard to get the momentum going. If it's after like a day and you can go exercise at night, I find that's the most therapeutic thing that I can ever do is jump on the mountain bike or go for a run, do some rocking. It's huge. Yeah, Charletta said, I'm uninspired to do anything above the bare minimum when stressed. Yeah, and I think that's
Really true.
yeah, that's so darn true. Um, so the other thing that happens is when this cortico releasing hormone, it inhibits or it stops the production of gonadotropin. So one of the reasons why your hormones, if you look and you're like, why is my testosterone so low? Like I had a 40-year-old client today. We're reading his blood labs. I'm like, your testosterone is 300, and it's so low, and you're leaving so much energy on the table. And this guy's a computer engineer, very busy, but he forgot to make some deposits in his health throughout his, the last decade of him really pushing himself. He's got 3 young kids. And now he just, he's basically, he told me he feels like a 70-year-old man. He has no libido. He doesn't really, he's got low grade depression. He's just really feeling stuck. And he feels like he's just chronically stressed. And so when I mentioned, I said, hey, one of the peptides we're going to be using to help remind your body to create testosterone is gonadorelin. So gonadorelin also works on the gonadotropin pathway. So once again, peptides are reminding your body how to communicate again. It's like putting in a great therapist right in your body and cleaning up the communication from system to system, cell to cell. Even the bioregulators are like, going right into the tissue structure itself and activating it. So many of the times, when we work on fertility or when we work on libido, the very first thing we do, reset the HPA axis. We want to work on the gut. What do? Reset the HPA axis, because that's the same pathway that impacts your vagus nerve, that can also disrupt your digestive system. So the other thing that happens when you have this, cortisol dysregulation is your body goes into a catabolic state. And what that means is your body starts breaking down its own proteins. And it does that usually from the legs and the butt. And so you see this all the time where people are, they just end up with the big belly and skinny legs and kind of like, you're like, wow, it looks like there's no leg mass. They're like on stilts. And that's because there's this chronic cortisol dysregulation, and it's called gluconeogenesis. So even if you're not eating sugar, you can still have high blood sugar dysregulation, because your cortisol demands sugar. And so anytime the body senses, the liver specifically senses, oh, there's high cortisol or cortisol's low, we need more sugar so that there's energy to either create more cortisol or to handle the stress response, running or fighting or fleeing. And then the liver goes into this process called gluconeogenesis, where it just spits out sugar into the bloodstream. And I've had a lot of people just be like, I can't believe I'm pre-diabetic because I eat no sugar, and they eat a really clean diet. But then we talk about their stress levels, and their stress levels are way too high. So these are, some principles behind why when we're starting care with anybody, and why when we're looking at hormones, if you don't fix this HPA axis, you're creating a lot of vulnerability where things are not going to be fixed for good. So here's kind of another image of what it looks like, because when you think about the HPA axis, very first thing that can happen is you can have not only the emotional stressors, but then you have environmental stressors. And what the environmental stressors do is now the brain has no idea what message is being sent, because you have what's called this negative feedback loop, where the body senses like, okay, Cade, if it's you, your body says, hey, I need more testosterone. And your brain is like, okay, we're going to make more testosterone, and it sends down more testosterone, but then there's no receptor site to bind it on, because you've been leaving plastic bottles out in the sun in St. George, and they're halfway melted, and then you still drink the water because you're super thirsty, but you just got yourself, all these, plastic toxins.
Got some good endocrine disruptors in there for sure.
Yes. And then the testosterone's like, well, there's nowhere to go. And so then it jams up the liver, because your liver has to take those and unconjugate those and try to recycle them. And your liver is already busy and it's stressed. So it's like, just go hang out in a fat cell. So let's just make Cade's midsection a little bigger. And so then, you see your midsection expand, and then you're like, what's going on? And I just need more hormones. And so then you get on testosterone replacement, but you haven't done the detoxification work. And then it works temporarily, but then you have this crisis where after 6 months, it doesn't work, and you feel neurotic, and you feel like you're going crazy on it, and you're putting on all this weight. And so this is what happens when we don't clean up the environmental stressors. So yeah, kind of an interesting way of looking at it when you start saying, well, here's where a lot of the crises are that could be averted if we just took care of cleaning up the mess, taking care of the stress response in the body. Things seem to work so much better when it comes to your hormones. So what about low DHEA? How many of you have looked at your labs and you found, oh, I have low DHEA? So, and DHEA is amazing, but if you have low cortisol and you have low DHEA, you've got to build up the cortisol first and then supplement DHEA. If you have high cortisol, it's fine. You can use DHEA, or if your cortisol is normal and you've done the salivary test with us, that's fine too. But you've got to be careful on adding DHEA if you have low cortisol. Otherwise, it's going to keep your cortisol level suppressed. So yeah, that's your. I think I'm getting a little too much into the weeds, Cade. So I'll let you comment.
Yeah, I think that's interesting concept. So if your cortisol is normalized, supplementing DHEA, no problem. But if your cortisol is not regulated, if it's flatlined or too high, you got to get that normalized before DHEA is even worse.
Indicated.
Will DHEA, if you're supplementing DHEA and your cortisol is not handled, will that cause like more problems, or just won't be effective?
No, if your cortisol is low, if it's high, it's usually not a problem with DHEA, and sometimes it can stabilize it. But if it's already too low, then what's going to happen is you're going to have competition between DHEA getting metabolized or your body producing more cortisol. And you need cortisol. You'll die without cortisol. It's the most important anti-inflammatory hormone the body makes. It's such a powerful hormone, which is why when the body senses there's cortisol dysregulation, everyone follows suit. That's why they call it the alpha hormone in the body, because it's everything sensitive to cortisol. And so once cortisol is high, then all the other hormones downstream get suppressed so that cortisol has precedence. So if you start adding in DHEA, then the body gets confused, and then the cortisol levels get lower, your body quits producing it. So it can be pretty dangerous. So kind of the moral of the story is, and I'm sure the question everyone has is, all right, how do we reset the HPA axis? And let's shift gears and we'll go into that, because I think from a mechanistic perspective, we probably lost a few people on this one. They're probably like, what? But I think we have a very smart audience. So I
biology class today.
Yeah, hopefully it didn't feel too much like a biology class. I actually like my biology class, but hopefully it felt like a biology class if you like that. So let's jump into some ways you can fix it, and we'll jump into the challenge for the week because I've gone a little over, and I apologize, everybody. But so how can you fix the HPA axis? So we talk about epitalin, and there's like cortisol manager, ashwagandha, rhodiola. These are really good. Lion's mane. I've been doing a ton of lion's mane lately after I got my cerebrolysin infusion and my stem cells. And lion's mane seems to be very neuroprotective. Those are all things you can do, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to give you two things, and we already talked about them, but one is getting into the sunlight right as the sun's rising. And it's really easy to do that this time of year. Man, it's great. I have this great patio area by my gym, my workout facility downstairs, and I just bring my weights out, and I got, a good 45 minutes to an hour every morning when the sun's coming up is when I'm doing my workout. And so that's one of the things you can do. If that's not realistic, then you can take a cold shower. And even both of those are great ways you can reset your HPA axis, because we have what we call the 60-day HPA axis reset, or the 60-day reset. But this is literally something where we're trying to get behaviors and new habits built in where you're doing it every single day. So that's your challenge for the week. Get some sun exposure, get in a cold shower, and reset your HPA axis. So, Cade, what were your takeaways from today?
I think this is, we got a question, Ryan. Sorry, both sun and shower. So either or, try to go for both, but the challenge is at least one of those.
Oh, Ryan, no, Ryan, absolutely both. Because yes, we got big goals. So you don't even have a choice. He's going to, why did I ask? And do your whole shower cold. In the summer, I just don't even give myself the luxury of a warm shower in the morning. It's all cold. At night, take a warm shower. It's great. But yeah, awesome.
Done. Perfect.
Love it.
My biggest takeaway is I love the sunlight concept. That's something that I could probably do a lot better at. Because I'm usually like either at the gym or I'm doing I could do my push-ups and like sit-ups exercise outside and get some sun. I like that. The sunlight. I really dig that. And I found it interesting to learn about the DHEA and cortisol. I had no idea about that. That was interesting.
Good. Yeah, I think
HPA axis tonight. I liked it.
Good. Yeah, I think Georgia loves the sun. Okay, so out in the sun in the morning, right as the sun's cresting. We have big mountains here in Utah, so sometimes you have to wait a little longer to see it, and it's like, where is it? But it will come. Just hang in there, and don't have sunglasses on. You want to get the full spectrum of the sun. Let your skin show. So be out there, get your shirt off, whatever you need to do to get nice sun exposure. So really appreciate you guys. And we will see you next week, where we're going to keep continuing our adventures on optimizing your hormones from a more natural perspective. So appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Regan. And thanks, everybody. Let's see how everyone does next week with their challenges, sunlight and cold showers.
Yeah.
Have a nice night, everybody.
Bye-bye.